Have you ever wanted to have delicious herbs right at your fingertips, fresh and ready for cooking? Today, I'm going to show you how you can plant your own herb garden directly in your own home. So, I'm putting on my gardening gloves so that my hands don't get too dirty from all of the soil I'm going to be using. I have a bag of potting mix and I have 4 herbs to choose from. So, I grabbed some Italian oregano. I have some Italian parsley as well, some basil, and some rosemary. These 4 herbs are ones that I use in cooking almost every day. Obviously, you can use it for Italian cooking like spaghetti, mastacholi, lasagna, all that fun stuff. I also like to use it in things like stir fries. I throw it into my taco mixes. It just brings that extra aroma to what you're eating, and I think that it makes every meal taste that much better, especially when it's fresh from the garden. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I have my plants spaced out in my planter, but I'm gonna actually remove them because you want to lay some soil down in your planter about 1/3 of the way full before you actually start planting. So I'm just gonna go ahead into my bag of soil and grab with my gloves. My bag is a bit too heavy for me to actually lift up to pour into my planter. If I was planting outside, that's probably what I would do, but since this is just a small indoor planter, it's not exactly necessary. So I'm just spreading that dirt out. I will show you the bottom of my planter, just spreading it out along the bottom. You want to make sure that whatever planter you choose to use has drainage holes at the bottom. You don't want to flood your roots. Okay, so I have the bottom of that covered, and now I'm just going to take my herbs, and you can kind of squeeze the bottom and you want to tip them over. You don't want to pull your plants out. You want to let them fall into your hand naturally. This is so that you don't disturb the root systems that are already growing on your pre-potted plant. And then I'm going to just take that plant and stick it right into the soil. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of extra soil, not as much as I need to cover the whole root ball, just enough to hold it into place while I get all of its friends ready to join in the same little neighborhood. Next, I'm going to do my parsley. And again, you just want to gently squeeze the bottom of that. If you notice that your roots are wrapping around the bottom of your soil, that means that your plant might be a little bit root bound. So I'm just going to go ahead and gently squeeze that so I can loosen up the root structures a little bit and help encourage them to grow more into the new soil. I am spacing these about 2 to 3 inches apart. You want to give your plants some space to grow, but since this is an herb garden, you don't want to give them too much space because you don't want your herbs to start flowering, because that's not how you're going to use them in your cooking. Next up is my basil. Basil is one of my favorite herbs to grow. I think it smells delicious. It's going to make the entryway to my home smell like an Italian restaurant. I am very excited for this one. Again, you can see those roots are kind of wrapping around the bottom, so I'm just going to kind of pinch to help loosen them up. You don't want to damage any of the root structures, but when you squeeze them, it does encourage those roots to start growing out instead of around. They are entering a new home with more space. These plants are going to be so happy. And my last plant is my rosemary. This one is a little bit bigger than my other plants, but it should still fit just fine in its new home. You can see this one is especially root bound. I rescued these from my local Lowe's. Anyone who knows anything about plants will know that sometimes Lowe's doesn't get it right, but that's why we come in to save the day. This one needs a lot of loosening, so I'm kind of like gently tugging at the bottom a little bit. Again, you don't want to damage those root structures. You just want to encourage their growth. Okay, so now I have all of my plants in the planter, and I'm going to actually grab my shovel to fill it up with the rest of the soil. This is so that I can really get that soil around those root balls and make sure that they are nice and secured in their new planter. This is a fun activity if you have children to do with them to help teach them about gardening. It's very simple indoor gardening, fun for the whole family or for yourself. And my shovel is a little bit pointed at the end. This helps me actually poke into the soil and give it some space so that those plants can really breathe underneath the dirt. And this is just a Miracle-Gro potting mix. It is really good for supporting the development of those root structures in their new bed. But you can use any kind of potting mix that you find. There are some that are specifically formulated for indoor gardens, for indoor planting. There are some that are specific for vegetable growth, which is another good kind to try. I just picked up the regular potting mix because I have a few plants that I'm going to be potting. So I wanted to use something basic that could cover all of my ground. Okay. So I'm just kind of feeling around, making sure that all of those root balls are covered with the soil. And then actually, before I am done with my soil, I'm going to take some water. This is about a gallon of water. I don't think I'm going to use the whole thing. I just want to wet down my soil. This is going to help that soil sort of settle a little bit and show me which spaces I still need to fill in. You want to be careful not to get it on the actual leaves of the plant. Just because this room does get a lot of direct sunlight in the morning, I want to make sure that that sun is not singeing my leaves, because those are the parts that you cook with. Okay. And I have filled in the rest of my gaps, just taking a few peeks at the front. I'm going to push that down and add a little bit more water on top of that new soil. And there we go. We're all done with our indoor herb garden. Let me take off my gloves so that I can flip around my camera and show you the final product. Apparently I can't do that. And there you have it. An indoor herb garden ready for all of your cooking needs.